might have to move this. Can y'all see me? Because I'm short, so sometimes even when I'm standing on a platform, you still can't see me. I saw a really cool picture the other day. It was a t-shirt that says, "I'm not short, I'm a people McNugget." That was the best. I thought that was cute. Okay, so for my girlfriends that are on the back row, I'm glad you're not sitting here. And then Megan sits down. So I'm going to start off with a couple of disclaimers. Yes, I'm going to cry. Yes, you are probably going to cry, but I don't want you to cry for me. I just want you to let whatever emotions and whatever tears come, because God is the one that brings those things to the surface, because he's trying to unlock something in you just like he tried to unlock something in me. So one of my favorite sentences is, "Laughter through tears is my favorite emotion." And it comes from one of my favorite movies. So with that in mind, I usually like to do funny things while I'm crying. So to keep in tune with that theme, since we are in a church, I would like the ushers to come forward, if you will. And at this time, we might be taking an offering, but I'm going to have the gentleman pass the boxes in the rows. So if you will take one.
I'm so glad I have waterproof mascara on.
Yes. So we're gonna be prepared, okay? Because my talk is entitled "When You Walk Alone," and I know everybody thinks that this is just about my husband's passing, but it's not. Because as I started preparing this, and Randy knows, because we emailed about this for about 2 or 3 weeks. I did my presentation, then I trashed it, then I did it again, and then we were supposed to be, I got it to about 35 minutes, and then I got the email that it was 15, and I freaked out, and I deleted my PowerPoint, and I said, "I'm not even speaking. This is stupid. I can't do this." And in fact, I handed Andrew my PowerPoint this morning, so that ought to tell you how prepared I was. But God is really good about see, I like to try to look awesome all the time and look great on the outside, because I don't want you to really know what's going on the inside. So I didn't put makeup on this morning, because I wanted you to partially, of course I'm going to blubber the whole thing, but I wanted you to see me looking great and looking awful at the same time, because it's okay, and I'm learning that at this stage of my life. When you walk alone navigating life after loss, it doesn't necessarily mean catastrophic loss. Sometimes you can have loss. Matt Habuda talked about loss in his life. Megan just got up here and talked about loss in her life. We've all had loss in our life at some point. And it doesn't matter whether you're 18 or 80. You will have loss in your life, so how do you walk through those times? So yes, I'm an English teacher, and every time I hit words or things when I talk to my students, I always like to break it down of what words mean. Where do I point this? There? Do I hit the green one? Which one do I hit? The right one? This is why I don't play video games. My kids hand me these things, I'm like, I don't know what this does. So, when I started looking up definitions for the word alone, and it's all about perspective, right? Like I let Doug, where are you, Doug? Doug Taylor. Thank you for that. Like and of course I'm going to blame Randy, because he probably put up the schedule together, but all of the talks leading up to mine coincide with mine. Perspective, it's all about how you look at a word, because you can look at this word alone and think in the corner, in a ball, in a dark room, dark music playing, So if you look at the definitions, one of them is an adjective. You know what adjectives are, right? Please tell me you know what adjectives are. They're words that describe nouns, right?
Yes.
Separate, apart, isolated from others. This is when it's used in a sentence of like, I want to be alone, leave me alone. Okay? Or there's an adverb. An adverb is a word that describes an action, how you do an action. So this is solitarily, solely. Oh, I also forgot one thing. If y'all have not met my awesome daughter, and if it was not for her and my son Seth, I would not be the person I am today. So I just want to say thank you for coming and believe it in Mom. Okay, so back to what we were talking about. The baby let go of the table and stood alone. Now that word alone is not bad because that's an empowering word. You watch, and I do this with my students. When I graduate, when I have kids graduate, it's kind of funny because my seniors, they go to the honors class and they always come stick their head in the door. Ms. Ronei, I missed your class. I'm like, I'm right next door. Just come in and say hi and then go on to class, because it's time for them to move on and be alone, be out there doing what they're supposed to be doing. But the definition I loved when I found this was the last one: unique, unequaled, unexcelled. He is alone among his peers in his devotion to duty. That word alone means that person is set aside because they're awesome. They're awesome, right? So, it's all a matter of how you see it. And we go to screensaver, because I'm just going to look awkward no matter what. Okay, so when I thought about this, I thought, gosh, there's so many songs about being alone. I started looking, you just do Google search and you look. And one of the most popular, you remember this guy?
Yes.
This guy became famous because he made a video about being alone in the airport. And he even sang the song with Celine Dion, the all by myself, And she thought that was cool, so now she asked him to come see a show. And he got to meet her. Now, I don't think he thought that when he was stuck in the airport, as those of us have probably been stuck in the airport. We're not thinking about, I can't wait to meet Celine Dion. But he used a moment of being alone to transfer that into something really creative and really wonderful. There's also the song, I Can't Live If Living Was Without You. Really? I got a word for that song. It's called idolatry. I can't breathe and exist unless you prop me up. What is that? Alone by heart. How can I get? Man, if you have to go to those extremes to get a boyfriend, I don't know what the problem is. But I'm going to tell you my story because my story is about being alone all my life. About walking through loss and being alone all my life. Now I say that because it's kind of funny because I am like a walking riddle. I am an only child, but I have 5 siblings. How can this be? Yeah, y'all are like. So I'm an only child, but I have 5 siblings. And you know that I'm from Hawaii. Now for those of you, how many have been to Hawaii? Did you love it? So give me some words that describe Hawaii to you.
Peaceful.
Breathtaking, peaceful, paradise.
Sun.
Let me tell you that life is not always paradise in paradise. Because even a beautiful place like this can be a living hell. So guess who that is? This is a picture of a baby girl who was born to 2 people who probably should not have had a child. I am the product of an affair between a backup. My life reads very much like the script of a very bad Lifetime movie or Hallmark after-school special. My mother went to college and had a best friend whose father was stationed in the military, and when her best friend and their family got stationed to Hickam Air Force Base, she wanted to go to Hawaii to be with her best friend. And so, because my mom was a spoiled, rich brat, she got to go to Hawaii with her best friend and go to school. And my mother was very talented, could speak 4 languages, very musical, and could sing. So here's this white girl in Hawaii as one of the backup singers for Don Ho. My father was one of the keyboard players, and he also played for Tower of Power. So those of you that are older generation, you know who these groups are. My father was in the middle of a divorce from his first wife, and as sometimes relationship goes in bands that travel, backup singers and musicians do what they do, and that resulted in my birth. So I'm child number 3 of 6 that my father had from 4 women. Myself and my youngest sister are the illegitimate ones. That's my dad. I look just like him. My mother reminded me of that constantly. You're just like him. You're just like him. Imagine telling a child who has a sex offender for a father that you're just like him. So I was placed in a family. It's my grandmother. Very sweet, very kind, loving woman who became, my grandparents became my parents because when my mother came back, she was so broken she couldn't handle it. And my grandparents pretty much took over and finished raising me, put me through college. And so my grandparents became my parents, and my mother became a shattered, mentally ill wreck. And see, what I started learning early in life, and what I would discover, is that God didn't create us to be alone. We were designed to be in families. We were designed to be in community, okay? That's what the Bible says in Psalm 68:6. God builds a home for the lonely. He leads out the prisoners into prosperity, and only the rebellious dwell in a parched land. And one of my other favorite verses I like to use, because I do this a lot, especially when I hear guys ragging about girls, females, blah, blah, blah. Gosh, they take forever, and they, all the clothes and all the blah, blah, blah. And I would always be the one that would pop in and go, God was the one that looked down and said, it's really not a good idea to leave man by himself. Need to make someone to help him. God's idea, not ours. So you're kind of stuck with us, guys. Okay? So, fast forward, went to school, did college really fast because all I wanted to do was get away from there. So that drove me to excel and to be better. I had to be better because I had to prove that I wasn't a mistake, that I wasn't an accident. Because if that was true, then why am I here? And I loved writing. In fact, I have a trunk in my bedroom that has my journals from that time when I was a kid. My writing was my way of escape, to go somewhere and be somebody outside of my hell that I was living in. My mother remarried a man who was a Jehovah's Witness, and he was very abusive, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And at 16, I left and went back to my grandparents. They put me through college, and so I did college in 3 years. Graduated my degree and got the hell out of El Paso, Texas. And I moved to Dallas, Texas. Now, my dream was to work for the Dallas Morning News. While I was in school, I had a column in the paper that kind of came out of an accident. And because I wrote that column, it ended up getting awards. I ended up getting a 2-year scholarship. And I thought, man, maybe I could be a newspaper columnist. That's really what I wanted to do. So I thought, wow, I really want to work for the Dallas Morning News. But the Dallas Morning News didn't have any jobs. But they were owned by Bilo Broadcasting, which also owned WFAA-TV, which is the ABC affiliate in Dallas. And so I thought, well, if I just get my foot in the door, I can just walk over next door. And they had an awesome cafeteria, by the way, the Dallas Morning News. Let me just tell you, so I would go over there and I'd hang with people, but there were no jobs. But there was a job in copywriting for the radio station because I could write. And that's how I started at the radio station. Well, I was there for 8 years. Worked my way up, and I became the promotion director. And I won't tear you on this. If you guys are friends with me on Facebook, you can go to my photo album called Radio Daze, D-A-Z-E, and you can see a compilation of pictures, because I was the one that took the winners backstage to meet the guys from Aerosmith, the guys from Whitesnake. I have a picture of me pregnant with my son's I think it was like a week before I was about to deliver, and of course, I have to take the winners backstage, and I'm like as big as a house, and okay, we got to take these winners, then I got to go home because I got to go to sleep. And so I have a picture of me where Sting has his hand on my tummy, because when he realized how pregnant I was, he just had his son, and so we got into this conversation about so what'd you do when you had your baby, and I was, are you okay? And he got all interested in talking to me. I'm like, you have winners over here that are waiting for you. You might want to stop touching my stomach. So that was my life. And during this time also is when I met my husband. I actually met him in a club in El Paso, and then we ran into each other again in Dallas. So talk about awkward. And so I worked there for 8 years. I also worked for the radio station format that became known as Smooth Jazz or the Oasis in Dallas. And so I went from there to that, met my husband. we had our children. I'm 5 months pregnant in this picture with our son. You wouldn't know it because I made sure the pictures and the flowers and everything were positioned just right because I felt embarrassed that I was pregnant early. But that's my husband. And that was our family that we built. So, fast forward, Sam worked for a lighting company called Bandit Lights in Nashville. If you have seen Alan Jackson, Toby Keith, Brooks and Dunn, Radiohead, Linkin Park, any of the last, probably the first 3 Lollapalooza festivals, the first 2 Bonnaroo, and a host of other people. But the longest stint that my husband had was he was the production manager and the lighting designer for the show Lord of the Dance with Michael Flatley. When that came over in '97, Savannah was about 18 months old, and that tour became our life for 15 years. And at that time, my husband was traveling 9 months out of the year. 9 months. And when I say traveling, I mean he had 3 to 4 month stretches straight where he was gone. I got to know a lot of military wives. I got to know a lot of oil rig wives because we were always passing each other at the airport. So that became our life. So even though I was married, I was walking alone, raising our children. And I was also spiritually walking alone because when I got pregnant with Savannah is when I got saved. God got a hold of me first. Evidently, I needed more work. So I ended up walking alone for a long time. And I kept asking God, do I have to keep being alone even though I'm married? Why is this happening? And God showed me, and here's my number 2 point. God will always fill in the blanks in your life. You got a hole? Let him fill it. You've got a blank that you don't know what to do with? Let him fill it. And so I found this verse in Isaiah 54. For your husband is your maker, whose name is the Lord of hosts, and your Redeemer is the Holy One of Israel, who's called the God of all the earth. For the Lord has called you like a wife forsaken and grieved in spirit, even like a wife of one's youth when she is rejected. So we moved to Nashville in 1995. We traveled with our children. By the time Savannah was 12 years old, she had been in almost every state in the United States and 2 countries. Our children were able to travel with us and go places and see things and do things that most children never get to experience in their lifetime. It's a picture of Savannah stretching with the dancers before a show. See her there in the little white shirt? These kids became our family. They loved us. They protected us. They loved my kids. But God will always use our circumstances to reveal our need for divine intervention. One of those years when Sam was out on the road, we went to St. Louis, and I found my husband ill in bed and could not move. He could not get out of bed. And here we were. I'd taken the kids to go see him, and I find my husband ill in bed. We take him to the hospital. Long story short, his cancer came back. We had a recurrence, and I had to figure out how to move him from St. Louis back to Nashville. Meanwhile, the tour was like, what do we do without him? What do we, they were scared. So as they brought the tour buses to the hospital, and one by one the dancers came in and said goodbye to my husband and cried and were worried, I had to take a very sick man back to Nashville and face cancer. So I had a conversation back with God at that time, and I told God, you have to fix him. This is my early Christian. I just gave my life to you, and this sucks. What is this? You said, you're supposed to save him because I've got 2 kids. How am I going to take care of them? You have to save them because we just bought a house, and I can't make the house payment by myself. And God kind of went, I'm sorry. Your source comes from who? And that was when I first learned that my source comes from God through my husband, So God was kind that time. My husband had, it was stage 2. It was a recurrence of his Hodgkin's disease. Hodgkin's is treatable. It was the second time my husband's body had to go through chemotherapy. So for 9 months, when my daughter was 4 years old and my son was 11, we were at Vanderbilt every week for 9 months doing chemo, walking my husband through that part of his life. And yet, you know what? I thought, surely God, surely he's going to give his life to you. Surely he knows you're healing him for the second time. And nothing. No conversion. For me, it was easy. For him, I didn't understand. So fast forward to the part of the story that y'all are familiar with. Once again, my husband came in off the road. He was complaining about his back hurting. I said, well, maybe you pulled a rib, you did something. Let's go check it out and make sure before you go back out on the road. We went in, they discovered he had some high blood pressure issues that popped up, so they said maybe this is what's causing the problem. And we got that under control, and about 5 days later, we got a phone call that said something showed up in a blood test. He's tested positive for hepatitis C. I'm like, what? What do you mean hepatitis C? Like, that's serious. That's really serious. I had to get tested to make sure, what if it was me? What if I had it too? Then that would mean, oh my God, I mean, just my mind just went everywhere. So if y'all have been on my Facebook page, and I have business cards out near Kevin's post, because I don't have a book, I don't have anything major. I can barely keep my blog up, but I have cards, thanks to Randy. And the picture on my Facebook profile was the private beach in Malibu at my girlfriend's place, where I sat, sitting in Malibu, having coffee, and I got the phone call that my husband was diagnosed terminal. My 50th birthday, I'm in Malibu with my best friend celebrating, and I get told, once again, my life is going to explode. My husband's in Tennessee, I'm in California, and I just wanted to jump off into the water. I couldn't take it again. See, when you're faced with a terminal diagnosis, your vision for the future becomes blurred. Sam and I had to sit down and have the hard conversation of what was going to happen after he was gone. It sucks to sit down with your husband and go, okay, so after you're dead, I don't know what I'm going to do, but we have to do something. And I want to encourage all of you, if you don't have a will, if you don't have a living will, if you don't have these papers in order, I'm telling you, get them now. Because the way the medical industry is now, if you do not have a piece of paper authorizing you to have a say in what's done, they do it to you, and they do it without asking. It's a legal nightmare for your family when they're left behind. I can tell you that a probate process without a will takes minimum 2 years. And spouses do not inherit, children do. So the court steps in and takes hold of everything, and that means your wife, your husband will be frozen from anything you have and you own, and they have to prove that they have a right to it. Okay? When you're given a time frame of 3 to 6 months, you become keenly aware that there's a date out there somewhere that's going to hit you in the head. You just don't know when it's coming. And in my high admin personality, when I found out, okay, so we have 3 months. So 3 months is like, okay, so really from this time point, this time, so I couldn't believe that I actually audibly told God, okay, Lord, so I know we have like 3 months. Could you like get your calendar out and sort of check? Because I got some dates that don't work for me. So it would really suck if you died at Christmas, because, you know, that's Christmas and that's your birth and life and celebration, and we don't want to put a downer on that. New Year's, that would be kind of bad. Our daughter's birthday is coming up in January. That would be bad. Our anniversary in January, that would be bad. February, that's like Valentine's Day. So if Sam could make it to his birthday in March, that would be awesome. The minute I said those words, I realized, wow, Ronei, still at this stage of your life, you think that you can tell God what works and doesn't work for you. By the way, thanks, Scott. I asked Scott to do that. Lord, these dates don't work for me. What is that? Like I would have been one of those in the Old Testament that would have been fried on the spot for being that bold. Jeremiah 29:11. Y'all know that verse. Let me read it to you this way. On the time and not a day before, I will show up and take care of you as I promised and bring you back home. I know what I'm doing. I have it all planned out. Plans to take care of you, not to abandon you. Plans to give you the future that you've always hoped for. Conversations with God. How do you talk to God? How do you talk to Him in the hard times? I'm going to show you a conversation I had with God where I got the divine revelation of what was really going on. So imagine, if you will, I'm getting ready to teach class. I'm up in the morning early getting everything together. And I do what I always do in the morning. I sit down and check Facebook. Because I got to check my notifications, right? Okay, so let's see what's going on in the world of Facebook. Whitman, Kuzo, having a conversation. Thule's been tagged 55 times. Angie and Ryan Eller are having an argument. John's world is fantastic. Yeah, their worlds are just all kinds of wonderful, aren't they? Mine sucks. So let's just check our YouVersion devotion for today. Psalm 61, 1-3. Hear my cry, O God, and listen to my prayer. From the ends of the earth I will call to you, and I will call as my heart grows faint. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I, for you have been my refuge and a strong tower against the foe. Hear my cry? You don't hear me.
Good morning. Good morning, Ronei. How's my girl doing? I heard my word being spoken, and I always respond to my word.
You always respond? Why haven't you answered me? You hear my cry? I've been crying for the last 3 days. Why is this happening, God? Why is this happening to us again? Why is this happening to Sam? He's a good man, Lord.
Do you remember the day you got married? I do.
Yeah. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Do you remember what you promised me?
I promise to take this man, to be my husband, to love him, to cherish him in sickness and in health.
What was the last thing you promised me?
Till death do us part. I don't want to let go of him, Lord, please. I don't want to let go of him. I can't. I can't. I can't. I can't. I can't.
Ronei, I have come to take that which belongs to me. My sweet girl, do you trust me?
Okay. You see, what I forgot at that moment was that Christ died for my husband a long time ago, and he didn't really belong to me. I got to have him for 28 amazing years. But in the end, God is going to come for each and every one of us because we belong to him. Do we trust God to accomplish his will through our dream? So let me share with you some recent events that have happened in this walk that I've had to trust God with. The day before we left for launch out was the day that I got the news that my mother was passing away. 30 years of struggle was finally coming to a close. And it was on the same day that I was driving to an interview to talk to the creative team at Thomas Nelson, and you are now looking at the person who is going to be taking over the audiobook proofing and editing project management for them. God will bring people in your life to catch you when you fall. God will strengthen you, and he will give you the desires of your heart. But you got to trust him even when you walk alone. Thanks.